Today we're talking about producing and directing. And essentially that is taking your project from the idea through development, through preparing scripts or interview questions, to shooting, editing, delivery, you're the person who's in charge of the whole workflow of the entire project. And that's what we're going to talk about today. And the first thing I want to do, so you all have something to think about, is I want you to write down an idea for a video you'd like to produce for Access Bellingham. So this idea doesn't have to be something, you're not committed to doing this idea. This is just something you'd like to do, something you've been thinking about. And for some people, if you have a video that didn't quite work out the way you wanted to, you can use that too. First, a couple of quick definitions. What is a producer? The producer is the person who plans and coordinates the shoot. This is typically the first person who's involved in the production, the person who has the idea, come up with financing, organize cast and crew, just help with all sort of the managerial stages of the production. The director is more the creative visionary. They're the person who says, this location will work, that person's in the wrong costume, we need to put the camera here, we need this camera angle. They're the person who creates the art of the video. But what I've found in the last couple of years of doing public access is that we are all directors and producers simultaneously. I think every project people have turned in, they've had that slash between the director, producer, and aim. And in fact, you often end up being director, producer, shooter, editor, the whole, if you're Jim, you do the whole thing.
No, 99.5%.
99.5% of the whole thing. Are there any questions? So there's 3 stages of production, and we are going to spend a lot of time talking about pre-production, about planning. Because if you get that part right, then the rest of your shoot will probably go well. They're in this order: production, or pre-production, production, and post-production. And what I often find here in our group is we will skip this stage entirely and jump right to production. So I thought of a couple of examples that I see a lot of.
All my videos is that way. All of mine were without planning.
You are going to be thrilled when you start planning. You're going to see a big difference. So how many people have checked out a camera, they're all excited, and they're like, yes, I'm going to grab a camera and I'm going to get this stuff, and they come back in a week and I say, how did your shoot go? And you say, I didn't do anything. Has that happened to anyone? Yeah.
Complete something.
Well, I have a lot of times where people they grab gear and they come back and they're like, I just didn't get anything done. Right. It's a week with a camera and nothing gets done. Or the reverse happens where people grab a camera, they shoot all week, they grab a camera again, they film all week, they grab a camera, they've had the camera for 3 weeks, they got a bunch of footage, and they look at it and it's just overwhelming, and there's no story in there, there's just a hodgepodge of shots, and they're overwhelmed, and then they just quit.
Looking at me.
No one's looking at anyone, Thaddeus.
That's my life.
No one's looking at anyone. Thaddeus. So hopefully some pre-production will solve that problem. So the first step always starts with an idea. And you've all written down an idea for a video? So let's play with this idea. I have a friend who builds furniture. I want to make a video about her. What do you think? Is that a good idea? I hear a sure. I hear nods on that. Yeah, I agree. It's a great idea. And I would even argue that there are really few very bad ideas. whatever idea you have is probably good. It's the execution of it that's going to make it good or bad. You can have a pretty mundane idea, and if it's really well done, it can be a great video, or you can have a great idea, and if it's poorly executed, you can have a really lousy video. So don't get too hung up on your idea, whether it's good or bad. It's the next step, which is, it's the execution of it that's important. Now the problem with this idea is that it's vague, the idea is poorly defined, and it gives us no direction for filming. And where I'm going with that is, like, how can you film this idea? Anyone?
Say that again?
Can you film this idea?
Yes.
Yes,
Who says yes?
I did.
Yes and yes. I'm going to argue that you can't film that idea, that you don't have enough information to film that idea. Let's break it down. Like, I have a friend who builds furniture. Like, what kind of furniture do they build? Are they building, you know, I know people who go out on their lawn and they build, you know, furniture with nails and sticks. Or you have the person who builds a really fancy cabinet out of cherry wood. You can even go to, like, I want to make a video about her. Like, about her life, about her making a piece of furniture, about her history with woodwork. Like, what are you going to make? So it's a really great starting point, but I will argue that it does not lead you to asking the right shots to have a successful video.
I think I have to differ with that.
Yes, please.
Because I kind of go with the flow and just let it come as it comes. You know, when I make my clothing, I have no plans at all. When I do the design in the front, I have no idea of the back. And likewise, no idea of the sleeves. I just kind of I go to the person's shop, see what's there, and just kind of go with the flow and let it come organically.
Do you have any
You
type
know
of
that-
story when you're done? Is there any story when you're done?
Yeah,
Or
I mean,
just,
you can look at my videos. I've got some videos. I'll talk to you later. I consider there is. Now that might be a subjective debate among others.
Yeah. No, I mean, table that, that's great, but,
Okay.
but hold that thought loosely, because I think there's more you can do.
Oh, I
I think
agree.
there's more you can do. Because, I mean, you take okay, so I have a friend who builds furniture. I'm going to plan, like, like, for example, what if they build a bunch of furniture, they have it around their house, and I want to go inside to their house and film the furniture they've built and film them talking about, like, telling me about the furniture they've built. That's one way to do it. Another way would be I would go into their shop. I would watch them build a piece of furniture over a period of time. I'm going to plan totally different for those two. For one of them, if I'm inside, I might need to bring some lights. I might only need a few hours with them. If I'm outside, I'm going to want to plan the day they start building the furniture, maybe halfway through, and then maybe see the end of the furniture. That might be a week-long shoot as opposed to a one-day shoot. So depending, and or I could talk, maybe the person learned from their father who learned from their grandfather. So I'm going to want to bring a lapel mic and sit down and interview them about their history with furniture. Like, what I want to do is going to define the gear I'm going to bring, how I approach it, how I schedule with them, and having a really clear idea of the story is going to help me. That's not saying your way is wrong. I do a lot of videos your way too, but I think we're going to talk about this a little later.
Okay.
That the plan can come really, really quickly, but you have to have a plan. And you might be able to come up with that plan on the fly, but you still have to have a plan.
Okay, if you're talking about that way, then yes, I agree with you. That wasn't.
That was my whole goal. So, as a side note, well, it's not a side note at all, but just something I talk about a lot that I want to bring up here. It's the idea of filming with intent, and I use that word a lot. If you've been hanging out with me for a while, you'll hear me use the word intent, because I think it's really important. Like, good video doesn't just happen. Every choice you make should be intentional. You should know what you're doing and why you're doing it. And that comes from where you're going to place the camera, what gear you bring to the shoot, how you prepare, if you're gonna have interview questions, what interview questions you're going to have, if you're gonna have a shot list, if you're gonna storyboard. Everything should be very, very intentional. Your edits should be very intentional. The music you have needs to match the video you're making. And it comes all the way to the pre-production stage. You need to be really intentional. The plan can change, but the plan can change, but you have to have a plan to start off with. I have a friend who builds furniture. I want to make a video about her. How would we turn that into a plan? What questions do we need to ask ourselves? What kind of video do we want to make? And I'm throwing this out to you all. Although I kind of already gave a couple out there, but what do y'all think?
You do like a how-to, how she does it,
How she does it?
how she creates each individual piece in our workshop.
Right. So do we want to go into the workshop then and film her actually creating?
Yeah.
Great. So then we have to ask ourselves maybe, what other question? What question does that lead us to?
Well, I would want to know how interesting that's going to be to somebody who isn't interested in building furniture themselves.
How interested it's going to be to,
Well, I mean,
Create a broader appeal.
yeah, create a broad, thank you, that's the best expression. So maybe, start out with a little interview of her getting into it and then do the how to do this.
so a little interview with her and her history, and then she talks about how to get into it.
Mhm.
Great. Okay, I'm starting to visualize this now.
You might ask her what her intention is in making the furniture. Is she just going to make it so that it's functional, or is she dealing with a particularly erudite client that wants it to be very artistic? So you want to know what her approach is going to be to making the furniture.
You guys, I love this because you're going to see why I love this in just a minute. What else do you need to know?
Well, I had a thought too about who's using the furniture, and maybe we could get some, is it just going into her house, or does she sell it to people?
Great.
I mean, and if she, or give it to friends or something like that, maybe we could get some people who are actually using that furniture, something that's already been made.
Right.
Say what are the aspects of it that please them or don't.
There's one other big piece of the puzzle that I feel like we're missing. Does anyone know what I'm thinking to this? Yeah.
Mine's not the answer to that. I was just
I think a big part of it is what kind of furniture is she going to make? Like, what is she going to make? Is she going to make something that's going to take weeks and weeks and weeks, or is it something she can make in a day? And the reason I love this conversation is because you kind of asked the same question I did. So I thought, in this totally hypothetical world, this is how I might phrase my idea. And I love that we use the word functional. I love that we talked about learning our history and our influences. Jenny's been building simple functional furniture since she was 12 years old. She's going to show us one of her favorite projects for the beginner. How she builds a simple outdoor bench using tools that most beginning carpenters already own. And along the way, the viewer will learn about her history with carpentry, her influences, and her latest projects. And it's going to be a 30-minute video. This is a really important key element. I think it's a great idea to start with the end in mind. Know if it's going to be a 5-minute video, a 30-minute video, a 2-hour video, you're going to have to approach it totally differently. If for no other reason, you're going to need a lot more footage to make a 2-hour video than a 5-minute video. Do you see how this starts to paint a picture that Jenny makes furniture, we want to make a video about her? Do you see how this paints a different picture? I feel like this is what I need. And I guess I should frame it this way, that everyone's going to work different. This is how I work, and these are the things that I need in order to get somewhere and be successful. I need something that looks like this. I've heard it called an elevator speech. So a very quick elevator ride, someone asks you, what are you filming? You're able to say, blah, 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 blah. Another reason I think these are important because it's a great way to sell it to your crew. if you're trying to get someone to come film with you and you say, I'm going to do a video about dogs, they'll be like, okay, that's great. But if you say, and I'm just making this up on the fly, if you say there's this great husky, it does all these fun tricks, I need you for 3 hours on a Saturday, are you willing to come play with, you know, this dog? Suddenly that's way more inviting. Do you see that? It gives the person you're asking a favor from a time frame, it gives them some connection to the project. So there's a lot of reasons to really condense your idea into something usable and something you can share. Is this valuable? Is this, people are nodding? Okay. Oh, and I'm reading this book right now that I'm really enjoying. It's called Double Vision, My Life in Film. I'm not even going to try to pronounce the Polish filmmaker's name. It's been around for years. I just picked it up at a used bookstore. And as I was planning this, I read this quote, so I thought I'd include it here. How can one define the idea of a film? Nothing is more difficult. Again, kind of just hammering home that idea that we really have to find. That the idea is something we have to work for. We have to work through that idea to find it. Our job is to find the thread that will explain and express the idea as beautifully as possible. So some questions you might want to ask yourself as you're thinking about your idea. And for those of you who've been with me, you hear me say the same things over and over. I have about 5 things that I say repeatedly. Have an intention, and the other is, what's the story? You know, what is the story? And what makes a story?
Beginning,
Perfect, beginning, middle, and end. Yeah. How can we give this not just, and with the example we just used of Jenny building furniture. Was that her name, Jenny? Yeah, Jenny building furniture. You know, it's an instructional video. It doesn't really have a strong beginning, a middle, and an end. But you can still, you know, she has to start somewhere with raw wood. She has to build it, and at the end, she has to have an end product. You know, there's still sort of a beginning, middle, and end in there. Another point is that people are really interesting. Even if you're doing a video, one of my mentors told me this a long time ago, and it really stuck with me, that even if you're doing a video about shoes, for example, it's never about the shoes. It's the people who wear the shoes. People are just way more interesting to us. And if you can make the video about people and why they do things and what they're doing, you're going to have, chances are you're going to have a stronger video. The story is often an individual with desires and obstacles. If you can really be clear on the desires and obstacles, it becomes a stronger video. And so, for example, with the idea we just used of building furniture, you know, do you really have an obstacle? I don't know. But that's the point where if the carpenter is building something and they say, this is a really tricky part, you know, this is where it can all go haywire, that's the point where you say, well, before you do that, tell me about that. You know, tell me why this is, you know, amp up those obstacles, because that's where it'll be interesting. I mean, you can see this in reality TV all the time where, you know, everything becomes, you know, a life or death obstacle. Also simplify your story. And I think it's really easy. I just watched a video I made years and years ago when I first started, and it was so convoluted and so complex. I had so many stories running through it. It wasn't bad, it was just so complex. And I think there's a tendency to want to make things really, really complicated. And I think you see this a lot in art as, you know, painters or photographers or musicians or whatever go through life. They really start to break things down to just like the beauty of one brush stroke or something. We tend to simplify as we get better. And so now's as good a time as any to start. Like, take your idea and see if you can really find a really razor sharp focus to it. and really keep it crisp and clean and simple. And obviously, these don't work in every situation. These are just questions to ask yourself, not bullet points to make sure you do. Also, as a producer-director, I think you need to know your strengths. Some people are really good at organizing and interviewing people. Some people are really good at editing and being on the computer and kind of being loners. Some people are really good visually with the camera. You don't need to be good at everything. But as you go on, start thinking and knowing your strength and start building up a team of people who can help you out. If you feel you're not good at doing interviews, find someone to drag along with you who's good at it, you know? Just look around the room, just because I know Lori and I have worked together. Lori gives it great, she can interview somebody. Yeah. But not everyone's great at that. And I know other people have struggled with editing. Find someone who enjoys editing and see if they'll work with you on the project. And what that means is you don't shoot a whole bunch of stuff and hand it to someone and say, can you edit this 3 hours of I don't know what I have. It means you have a plan, you film to that plan, and then you have a conversation with your editor, like, I've looked over this footage, this is the direction I want to go, can you help me get there? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And another quote I ran into as I was preparing this. Good writing is good writing because you feel something, and yet emotional response is a subject often overlooked. Emotion, not logic, is the stuff of drama. Emotion is your screenplay's lifeblood. I really like that as another bullet point, or maybe to sort of tie all those bullet points together about story and character and people, and if you really try to find the emotion of the story. And this is something that I think this is something that is often, I think we believe as human beings for some reason that logic and reason and giving people statistics and all that will actually convince them of something, but I just don't think that's true. I think people are moved by just how they feel, like they have these vague feelings, they make, giant decisions based on really vague feelings. And, really strong feelings, but it's vague why they were created in the first place.
That's
So
why
I
it
just feel
seems so
sure.
important with the music you use with your video.
Yeah, for
too,
sure.
Because that
Exactly.
can bring a whole different element.
Super important, super important. Yeah, the emotional content is really important to your video. This is a slide you've already seen because I use it a lot. I really think we need to be unique, not perfect. I think it's really important because we already have a lot of people making, maybe this is from March of the Penguins, I don't know, but we have someone's out there making the $1 million movie, but that's not us. So we have to find something closer to home, something that we care really deeply about, or that we think's funny, or a person. Your story's perfect. Like, you are the only person who will ever tell that story, which makes it awesome. No one is ever going to talk about thumb wrestling with Rick Larson. No one probably ever has, and no one will again, which makes it super exciting, and that's what's going to make people watch it. If you were going to talk about Rick Larson's politics, it's already been done over and over. Like, no one's going to see that. No one cares because it's already been done. It's probably been done pretty well by professional news anchors and lobbyists or whatever, everybody. So find the thing that makes you unique and your experiences unique and what interests you. And it doesn't matter how ridiculous that thing is. No offense. It could be anything. If you collect figurines of ducks, do a video about that, because someone who collects figurines of ducks, and they're going to love it, and there's going to be the next episode of Game of Thrones, and they're going to be like, I don't care, I want to see the figurines of ducks, this is my thing. You're going to find other people who have, their thing is your thing. So your interests and passions are interesting. Are there questions?
Director recently told me that 85% of the full production was done in pre-production and that's what kept him out of trouble.
That's great. I will quote you on that.
I'm quoting him.
Quote him on that. I will quote him
Can't
on that.
lose.
85% is of the production is done in
Because he
pre-production.
said every time somebody asked him something that he could answer right away.
Yeah. When you're in production mode, your brain is full. I mean, you don't have time to, you don't have a lot of extra brain space to handle questions because you're making really creative decisions and monitoring the story. And yeah, if you have a plan and people come to you and you have available answers, it just keeps the thing clicking along because there's gonna be a lot of people coming to you and you're gonna have to make hundreds of decisions right away. Just literally hundreds of them are coming at you all the time. And
I thought it was good advice.
really good advice. This part may be more difficult to talk about because the visual language of film has its own grammar, and it's a grammar that we have to get to know. And it's not a grammar of words, it's a grammar of pictures. Being able to pre-visualize your project takes you learning to be able to really see in pictures and how they're going to work together. So this may not be entirely clear as we talk about it. Be sure to ask questions, and it's something that you will learn to do really quickly as you continue to work. So after we've got this idea, it's fleshed out, it sounds good, now we have to start visualizing what it's going to look like. So I'm going to talk about a project that we did here in class. The idea is I'm going to film the Procession of the Species parade. To me, great idea. However, the Procession of the Species parade takes how long to get by? Does anyone know if it's five? What?
Hour,
The Procession of the Species, like 5 minutes.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't take very long at all.
Oh, is this just going by?
Yeah, is it going by? I mean, it doesn't, I don't know. I'm going to say 5
Like an
minutes,
hour
but
or-
yeah, no, it's really, really short. So it's a great idea, but I think it merits more than a 5-minute video. So my thought was I want to make a 30-minute video out of it. How am I going to do this? So I'm going to expand this idea a little bit, and I'm going to show the Procession of the Species parade through parade footage, through filming the preparation, interviews with the participants, footage of the after party. I want to capture the energy and spirit of the event. I want it to be a 30-minute video. So now that that idea is expanded, I have to start to visualize what is this going to look like. And how I do it, and this might be unique to me, I don't know, maybe everybody does this, but how I do it is I kind of start to play the film in my mind of what I think it should look like. So I'm going to throw this out to you. So if you're playing the Procession of the Species video and you want it to be 30 minutes long, how do you visualize it? What do you see happening? How does it start?
People getting together, before the parade.
So people getting together before the parade, and what are they doing?
Preparing the floats, getting into the costume.
Preparing floats, getting into costumes, great.
I started thinking about how many cameras you're gonna have.
I'm not going to go there
Okay.
quite yet, but that's exactly where that's what we're going to get to. But I want to visualize it first, and then I can start to ask myself,
Okay,
how do I need to
visualize it.
logistically
Yeah.
get this? I just want to, again, it's that idea of starting with the end in mind. What do I want this end product to look like when I'm done?
I see like the very first thing I would like to film is the very first little critter that I see, and like zoom in that little critter and watch the growth and like end it with the big party that it grows into.
So you start with the first critter. Is that the first critter
Yeah,
in
it
the
looks really small.
in just as they're preparing, or in the parade, or?
That kind of shows up. I'd like to be there and see the first critter. that
Oh, the
shows
first
up.
person that shows up. Got it. That's great. And then
That's the-
what comes next?
More critters.
More critters, we're preparing. What comes after the preparation? What happens?
We can do some interviews
Do some interviews with people?
before the.
Find out what? Like, what are we going to find out about?
Well, I can find out, if you're not sure what they are, what are you?
What kind of creature are you?
And, did you make your own costume?
Great.
You-
Great. what kind of creature are you? Do you make your own costume? You can go, and you just keep going on and on. Why are you here? What's fun about this? Do you have other friends? Have you practiced? I have no idea. You just go on and on, learning about why they're at the parade. All right, so after the interviews, what happens?
Parade goes, doesn't it?
Parade happens. And after the parade happens,
Clean up.
Post-parade party, or interviews with the viewers.
post-parade party with more interviews. Yeah. How did you enjoy the parade? Was it
Yes.
fun? What are you going to do? Are you going to be here next year? Yeah.
And the
That's,
final will be the party, yeah.
and the final's a party at the end. That's great. Love it. Done. So this is how I thought through it, and there's no reason this idea is any, it's more or less the same thing you thought of. I did something just a little bit different. Instead of opening with the very first creature, which would be equally good, and right when you said it, I thought, oh, I like that. I opened with the parade coming down the street. I just thought, big parade, visualize that, visualize highlights from parade, everyone, floats and kids and costumes and monkeys and penguins doing dance routines, whatever it is. And then maybe even cutting to some text that says 30 minutes earlier. Then going right to your talking about, we've got an open field and people start showing up. And then after that, it sort of just follows your logic of they're putting on costumes, we get some interviews, practicing routines. It's almost the exact same thing we just said. More interviews, we get the parade, highlights from the after hours party, interviews with participants, closing shots and credits. Each of these being about 3 minutes, add an extra 3 minutes in there, I think you're at 30 minutes.
Yeah.
So now we have a plan. Now we can visualize what we're trying to do. I never write it down with this much. I would never personally make a spreadsheet with this on it, but I would write it. I'd take you'll see I always have a spiral binder on me. It's just how I work. I would take my spiral binder and start writing down notes of what I think it's going to look like. Now we know that we need to film participants getting ready, we need to film the parade, we need to get 6 to 8 interviews, and we need to film the closing party. Now we have a plan. I want to film the procession species parade, it's not a plan. This is a plan. Any questions? Is this helpful? That's the thing, good, more nods. We're going to bounce right into pre-production part 3, cameras, mics, and crew. After you have your plan, you can start asking yourself what kind of cameras, mics, what crew you need, and obviously refining your idea, visualizing your final video leads really smoothly to, okay, now we can start working through the logistics. And another scenario, this is something that comes up here a lot. We've had several people do film, like community forums, so I just made a hypothetical one up we can talk about. So we've got 2 speakers, one's a representative from a land company, we've got a representative from an environmental organization. They're going to discuss issues in Whatcom County. The audience will have a chance to ask questions to each presenter. The idea is pretty much fleshed out, it's just we're recording an event as it happens. There's really no need to visualize it, it's going to happen before us. But we do need to ask some questions to be planned for this. What are some of the things we need to know in order to make this
How long?
happen? How long is it going to be? That's
How much
right.
fill are we gonna need to pump it out to whatever?
Well, how long is it going to be? Because
Yeah.
however the length of it is, if it's an hour, then our video is going to be an hour, right? Or if it's 90 minutes, our video is going to be.
Do you wanna do introductions or a background before it?
Nope, we're just going to go in and film this event as it is. And if someone comes to the podium and says our first speaker is John from Resources,
You don't wanna start with a photograph of the water or?
no, I'm just going to start, we're just going to film, this is going to be a really straightforward forum. It's going to fade up to the forum, and we're not doing anything artsy with this one, it's just the event. So, those would be great ideas. Those would be great ideas. I'm just not doing it this time. This is going to be just the forum. This is just
like
for
what we're
information.
doing today.
It's just like what we're doing today.
Yeah.
Exactly what we're doing today.
Oh, okay,
So
all right.
it's just, we're not going to try to add our We're not gonna try to add our voice onto there. We're gonna just use their voice. So what questions do we need? But that's great. That's one of the questions we need to ask ourselves.
Right.
Now that you said it, I realize how perfect that is. Do we want to add our voice and our layer it with, like I think you said a picture of the water?
Right.
What you said?
picture
You
of
want
the
to,
water,
but
and
that
music,
even that,
and then fade into the auditorium.
but even that kind of imagery of the water and the music is going to add our own personal voice on there.
Yeah.
And we don't want to do that in this. So that's a
Okay.
great question. Do we want to add our voice? And I'm going to say, no, we don't want to add our voice in there. We want to just fade up to it.
Okay, I see what you mean, I have to go back to my own video.
But you have to know what kind of, how close you're gonna get to the speaker with the microphones, what kind of microphones, and then the people who ask questions, how are you going to get their voices?
Exactly. You're going to need to know all of those things. That's perfect. Yeah. So what I would say for something like this, you almost have to scout the location beforehand. You want to see the room that you're in. You want to see just exactly what you said, Jonah. Just how close you can get the cameras, where you're going to place the cameras, how you're going to deal with the audio issues, how long it is. What else? What am I missing?
The lighting.
Lighting. You have to think, is there enough light in there to get it?
Microphones.
Yeah, microphones.
Can you tie into the PA system?
Can you tie into the PA system? That's great.
Yeah, that way you get the best sound.
For sure, for sure.
Yeah, oh.
All of these, again, I think, once you start thinking through it, you start realizing, I need to go to the location, I need to talk to this, I need to communicate with the sound man, whether by email or meet him at the location.
How much time will you have to get in there to set everything up? Because I had to do an event where they unlocked the doors 5 minutes before the first speaker spoke. Oh,
Such a good point, Mark. Yeah, you need, how much time do you have for prep? How much
yes.
time do you prep? How much time do you have to get out of there? Yeah.
Here, going, unfortunately.
So what do you need to know? And I just love this because these aren't, none of this stuff is mystery. You all already know this. It's just a matter of, oh yeah, that's what I have to do. That's the work. And when I say the work, it's actually some of my favorite part of the work because it's stress-free. If I go, meet someone at the space and talk about it, it's when I get all the information I need and I can just visit with someone I meet someone new, I'm doing something that I enjoy doing, I sit on my couch, I make notes, I drink coffee. It really is the fun part of it. And in addition, it makes the rest of it even more fun because I'm prepared and I know what I'm doing when I get there and I seem confident. My shoot works out well. So, each speaker will speak from a podium using a mic plugged into the sound system. We already talked about that. The sound person will give us a feed from their soundboard so we know we're going to get good audio. Speaker will be followed by questions from the audience, but the audience will not be on a microphone. That is going to be a bit of a problem, but we'll deal with that. The event will take 90 minutes.
90 minutes.
So we decide we're going to use 4 cameras, 1 wide shot, 1 for each speaker, and 1 on the audience. There's no reason you have to use 4 cameras. You could use 6 cameras, you could use 1 camera. This is just, in my perfect world, if I was doing this, I'd want 4 cameras. So, may as well start with what you want and work backwards from
Then the
there.
question asks, can your editing suite be able to synchronize to 4 cameras?
Yes, it
So
can.
the audio can be right on the
Yep,
button?
for sure.
Okay.
For sure. So now we have,
Question.
oh, yes.
Alright, so I've always wondered how they film movies. How there's 2 people talking and one camera will switch to one person and the other one will switch to the other person, but the other camera's not behind that person. Where did it go?
Right. There's a number of ways they do that. They either do 2 totally different setups where they film, they're using 1 camera and they film 1 angle and they flip it around and film the other angle and then they just cut it together in post. Or a lot of times, and I'm not even close to the Hollywood system, so this is just what I've seen and I don't, this might be wrong. But I think a lot of movie and TV shows now are doing it where they'll have multiple cameras running at the same time. wides and medium shots and close-ups and the reversals, all sort of simultaneously, just keeping the camera out of frame.
Yeah, I always wonder how to do that. It's amazing.
Yeah, so I guess, I mean, the answer is, it's totally depends. Sometimes they'll have multiple cameras, sometimes it'll be one camera. So with our current plan, we now come up with a shooting plan, which means I'll use 4 cameras to capture the event. I'll also need tripods. I'll need a crew of 4 at least, 1 on each camera, maybe even a 5th for audio. I'm going to grab an external recorder, plug it into the house sound system to capture audio. All 4 cameras will have shotgun mics to capture the audience questions. We're going to arrive 90 minutes before the event. We're going to need 30 minutes to break down. So plan on 3.5 hours total if I did my math right.
You forgot lighting.
And we didn't need lighting. We found out the house lights they've got house lights at the venue. So
All right.
I think this is 2 hours. Hour and a half and 30 minutes is 2 hours.
And then the time for the event itself. So it gives it to 3.5 hours. So this gives us our shooting plan, what we need, how we're going to do it. And as much as this sounds like a really complicated shoot, if you know you have a crew of 4, each person grabs a camera, you have the external mic, you know you're going to just plug that into the sound system. And sound people are generally, in my experience, really, really helpful. They will hand you a feed. So the more that you plan, I feel like it sort of gives everything kind of breaks everything into steps on what you need and makes something that sounds unmanageable first more manageable.
So Errol, when you show up then ahead of time, is that when you assign people to cameras and tell them I want you to do right angle from this position?
Yes. Yeah, I'll generally, if I scout a location, I will plan on
Right.
what I need and where I need cameras. And so
Then
when I show up the day of, I know exactly what I need, and I'll just tell people like, can you do this shot? Can you do this shot? Can you go there and do this shot? And I'm gonna get this shot and I'll do it by the soundboard and I'll take care of the recorder too. So I've got this area. And yeah,
So that's.
and that gives us, and if it says 90 minutes. I think I planned for 90 minutes to set up, which sounds like a lot, but it's amazing how fast time goes and how much more fun it is.
Yes.
It's so much more fun if you have extra time. If you're pushing and you're worried that they've opened the doors and you're not ready, it gets stressful and this is no fun. If you're having fun, you're setting up, and sometimes you make a mistake. You set not sometimes, often. And it's not a mistake, it's you make a decision that you realize could be better. You think you're going to set a camera up here, and you realize, you know what, the lighting is so much better if we move that thing to the other side of the room, or the background looks better if we move to the other side of the room, or something. And if you get there early, you have time to make those adjustments and get just the way you want it. And then it becomes fun. When things work really well, they're really fun. That's my opinion. When they don't work well, and this is true of, so much of videos. When I'm making a video and it's not working out well, I am so miserable. And then you make it work. In fact, I think all videos have a life of their own. This would maybe be off topic, maybe not. I think there's the excitement of starting a project. I think there's the excitement of planning it. There's this gearing up, you do the shoot. You get home, you look at your footage and you think, I may or may not have what I need. And you start looking at it, you kind of start to come down, and then you start to cut it, and you're like, this is not going to work out. This is not what I was imagining. This is not what I wanted. And then somehow miraculously, it works out great. And so you do, and then you have this extra high when you've got a good video done. So you kind of have this weird. Every video has this sort of pattern to it. So don't be surprised when you get to. You've made your plan, you've shot it. And you get home and your first cut is just like, oh God, this is not the plan. This is not what I wanted. And you're stressed and you go to sleep and you're like, how am I going to fix this? How am I going to fix it? And then it somehow comes to you. It's like, I need to just cut the middle out. Or if I just had a shot of a
Wide, medium, close.
Yeah. Well, I was just saying, if I just had a shot of a car going down the street, I could film. I'm going to fix this with. I just need to go out and film the city of Bellingham a little bit. Put in some extra shots. I don't know. You come up with a fix, and then it's really, really fun. just some questions to get you started. We've already gone through all of these, but I just wanted to kind of laundry list it here. What's the story you want to tell? How can you make your ideas more simple, more focused? How long do you want the video to be? How many cameras do you need? The kind of microphones you need? When is the on-camera talent available? Or when is the space available? Or when are people available? When's the location available? How long will I need to be on set? And where do I need help? And this would just be kind of before you even think about checking out a camera. A simple list like this will get you started. And then I wanted to, at the tail end of this, I wanted to talk about video art is the only way I can think to call it, because a lot of us aren't doing, things that are really complicated like this. A lot of us are just going out and creating videos about whatever thing happens to interest us. And just an example of that I did a while back for our public access station was I made a little video called Reflections. And what happened is I was supposed to have a shoot. The shoot was rained out, so it was raining in Bellingham. I'm walking down the street, it stops raining, and I see these beautiful reflections in the puddle. So I just pulled out my camera and I filmed the reflection with no plan. I just thought, this is beautiful. I'm gonna film this and see what happens. And after I was done filming that first thought, or that first shot, the whole video came to me. I knew it's really simple. I knew I was going to film reflections in puddles around town, and I was going to put it to sort of meditative music, and I knew it was going to be called Reflections because you reflect and you meditate, it's reflections in a puddle. I didn't need to plan it out, but I needed to have a plan at some point. So I didn't just film a puddle and then a cat and then a parking meter. And the point of this is your plan can be really simple. You don't need to have a complex plan. You don't need to write all this stuff out if that's not the way you want to work. But I would say you still need a plan. If you've pressed record if you've taken 3 shots and you still don't know where it's going, you're just thinking, wow, these are really cool shots. I think you're going to be in trouble. I think if you don't know where you're going by the time you've shot 2 or 3 things, then it's time to stop recording and thinking about what you're actually going to do with this footage. My opinion, you're welcome to shoot away, cut it all together to some heavy metal music and send it on down the line and be happy. And it doesn't matter what it is. But to have a really successful video, one that people want to watch and people connect to, I think you need a plan. It can be simple. And the last point on this is that I do believe also that constraints lead to creativity. When, even if I'm going out to test a camera or just to collect some footage that we're going to all share, I always have to go out with a plan. And that might be as simple as many of you have worked with the Bellingham montage footage that I used for our editing class. I just went out and I thought, I'm going to explore lights and shadows around Bellingham. That was the extent of my plan, but it gave me something to anchor in, and I really believe constraints lead to creativity. So when I was making that, I was filming lights and shadows. If I saw something really cool, but I didn't really appreciate the way the lights and the shadows played on the subject, I didn't film it, because it wasn't part of that shoot. And by giving myself constraints, it forced me to really look at the world with new eyes, something like that. So even the video art, even those things where you say, I'm just improvisational, I grab a camera and I just shoot things. I would say, give yourself constraints. Find yourself some sort of plan that you can stick with, and you're going to have a better video, in my opinion. Are there any questions?
It's not really a question, but
Or comment.
on that, yeah, it seems like sometimes even if you don't have the plan, like I've just found that I take that footage, so like say the fair, I shot the rides. So the rides, I didn't know where I was gonna go with it, but by dropping it in the timeline and doing some moving around, that helped make make things come together cohesive, whether it was color or mood or
Right.
movement or whatever.
Well, you had a plan, you were shooting, it sounds like you were shooting the rides in
Well, I
there.
did, yeah, that was the loose plan.
That's a great point, I mean,
Without
that's,
anything after that.
that's, yeah, that's
Just
great.
dropping them in there helped it like come together.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just a comment.
But that is
Some
a,
people
that,
haven't even dropped it in a timeline, like their shots, right? So like,
you're
take
right,
the shot, just drop them in there and see what comes out of it.
that's great,
you know,
that's a good point.
you know.
But that does, to me, that also brings up another point, like, that's pretty specific, you're shooting rides at the fair. That is, I mean, that is definitely a plan.
I didn't shoot.
You didn't know where it was
shot
going to go, but
Yeah.
you were shooting rides at the fair. You didn't then go off the next day on that same car and shoot the beach or something. You shot rides at the fair and you made a video about that. That is a plan. But I think your second point's also really good too. I think a lot of times we shoot things and we don't trust that something's going to come of it.
Yeah, we don't know yet, so we don't start, you know, I don't know what this is yet, I don't know, you know, I don't know what to do with it, I don't have an idea yet. But just dropping them and tossing them around a little bit
Yeah, yeah.
helps people.
How are you guys doing? Is this helpful? Is this?
I didn't think it was gonna be for my, the little things, but it really is.
Yeah.
helping,
Yeah.
Think differently.
If it's not, just ask questions that you think might help you out. So,
Oh, yeah, I never heard that.
moving to pre-production,
Yeah.
part 4. There's so many parts. Okay, we have our idea. We've refined it. We're starting to visualize it. We've got our cast and crew together. Now we have to start preparing scripts, shot lists, whatever those things we might need are. And some of those things you might need a written script. You might need a shot list. You might need storyboards. You might need interview questions. On some videos, you'll need all of these. On some videos, you'll only need a couple of these. A written script, I think that's pretty clear. So I'm just going to pass right over that and go right to a shot list. This is a shot list that I pulled out of my recycling bin. Just to kind of show you what my shot list looks like. So you know it doesn't have to be, again, the spiral bound notebook is my best friend. If you're just working as producer, director, shooter, as I was in this, you don't need to share your shot list with anyone. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to type it up or anything. It can be really simple. But after visualizing it, after visualizing the video, I knew the shots that I needed. And it's really hard to read, so I'll read it out loud, but maybe you'll be able to visualize it with me as I go through these shots. So you've got a car. This is a mechanics shop that I was doing a video for. You've got a car, it pulls into the mechanics shop. Bob greets the customers. He takes their keys. I'm picturing that in a close-up. You're inside of the office. The customers are able to get coffee. We watch the car pulling into the shop. We're looking at the diagnostic equipment for the car. Bob is discussing the work with his other mechanics. The couple pulls out in a loaner car. Then we see the whole crew in a shot. It's sort of like that hero shot where they're all smiling in front of the place. And the couple drives off in their fixed car. I know those are the shots that I'm going to need to make this video work. Now, I also know while I'm there, I'm going to come up with a bunch of shots that I didn't think of. But these are I know that if I have these tell the story of the couple who needs their car repaired. You'll also notice that we made a decision not to show mechanic going under car, person turning wrench. We decided that that wasn't why people take their car to the shop. We didn't want to show what happens behind the scenes. We just wanted to show the couple getting a loaner car, getting coffee, and getting their fixed car. That was what was important. So by having this shot list, it really keeps me really ground in to what my goals are. Does that make sense? And then from there I can I don't look at this. I put it on a clipboard. I write it down, I put it on a clipboard, I bring it to the shot, and I throw it down, and I never look at it again. Because I'm going to just let whatever happens, happen. And then before I leave, I'll go back through it and I'll be like, oh, you know what? I did need one more shot of you why don't you hand him the keys in a close-up? But it's not something I'm referring to constantly. It's helps me map it out in my head. Storyboard for me is the same way. This is a storyboard I grabbed off the internet. It's, to me, it's intimidating. I wouldn't want to have to make a storyboard like this, but it's very clear what's happening. You know, motorcycles driving, popping wheelies, there's a car. I wanted to show it to you because I wanted to use it as sort of a counter to my storyboard, which looks a lot more like this. And again, I don't need to share this with my art department. I don't need to share this with the camera department. But by sketching this out, it helps me do that pre-visualization thing I was talking about that I find so important. So, I know what's happening. There's 3 people near the car. They're having a picnic here. I know I'm going to be I need one on a wide lens. I visualize that this is going to look good on a wide lens. Here's another storyboard of mine for a different shoot. There's a couple in a hallway. I know I'm going to put this on a slider. It's a thing that makes the camera slide back and forth. My little HH is my code for handheld. I know I'm going to use handheld shots. Camera's going to go from the face down to the tie. By doing this, it helps me know that what I'm seeing in my head, once I get it on paper, it makes me confident that it will work. So it's really just for me to be able to see it. And I do this unless it's full documentary where I have no idea what's going in. If I have any kind of script at all, I will typically make myself just make some notes, make a little storyboard. And again, this is that director whose book I'm reading right now who happened to just echo exactly how I work, so I wanted to include it in here. And how I work is not the correct way to work, it's not the only way to work, it just happens to be how I work, so it's all I can share with you because it's all I know. And he happens to do the same thing. I try to work out the various shots in sequence, draw up a blueprint of the whole scene before the shoot commences. And then, I give all these sheets of paper to my assistant director because at the time of shooting, I want to approach that same scene with a free hand and my mind completely open to anything that might strike me on set. And I think that's great, and I think that's I think it's a really strong way to work. I think there's a real balance between planning and creative intuition. And I actually think you can over-plan. I tend to plan a lot, and I've noticed I have been over-planned and not allowed myself to veer from that plan, and it's been detrimental. So you can over-plan. You can certainly under-plan, get there, and not get what you need also. Where that balance is going to be individual for you all. But I feel like you do have to find that balance. It sounds like you, right now, you're on the improvisational end. You just show up and it all works out. I think I've read stuff about Alfred Hitchcock where he has the entire movie in his head and he just has to make, there is not improvisation, it's already there frame by frame. So somewhere in the middle of those, I'm probably here, and other of you are going to be here, and I'll be here. But you'll have to figure it out for yourself. Final thing on this list is interview questions, and I want to talk a little bit about crafting good interview questions. Know the story that you want to tell. We've already discussed that, but then know the role that the person you're interviewing has in that story. You want to know what that person is going to speak to. If you're doing a video about, I don't even know, they're building a new library. And you talk to the mayor, they're going to give you one thing, and you talk to the engineer who's designing the library, they're going to give you another. You don't want to mix those two questions up. You'd be wasting your time. The mayor's going to give you stuff about, hey, this is great for the community, and we need this, and the engineer is going to say, hey, this thing's going to be 3 stories tall, it's got all this new green engineering in it, or whatever they're going to talk about. You want to know where that person fits into your video. Emotions are way more interesting than statistics. We keep kind of coming around to the same thing. The same things keep popping up. Listen with curiosity because your interview questions are the same. I do the exact same thing with my interview questions that I do with my shot list, which is I write them all down. I'm really clear. Often when I'm driving, they're in the car next to me, and I'll kind of like glance and I'll look over them, and then I'll get to the interview, and I'll put them under my chair, and I'll never look at them again.
Aha, okay.
Because I'm just listening with curiosity, and I'm just going to ask that person questions. We're having a conversation, and that's, I think, when the interviews are best. There's a great quote that I heard that I really love, which is, the camera looks both ways. The camera is looking at the person you're interviewing, but the person you're interviewing is reflecting you back to them. If you're interested, if you're curious, if you're giving them eye contact, they're going to be engaged, they're going to give a good interview. If you're looking down at your notes, or you're bored, or you're nervous, or you're rushing through it, the person is going to feel all of that, and they're going to be either bored, or nervous, or rushing through it. So the camera is pointed that way, but it's looking back at you also. So keep that in mind when you're interviewing. The more clear you are, the more calm you are, the more curious, the more interested, you're just going to have a better interview. Any questions? Oh, finally, the bane of all people who do their first interview is pretend I'm the interview and the person is talking. You're going to hear, yeah, It's, we feel like we need to prod them on to keep the interview going. You don't need to. Just ask the question, shut your mouth, let the person talk. When the person's done talking, count to 3. You don't actually count to 3, but just like, then ask your next question. Don't talk to them, don't interrupt them. You don't need to give them your opinion on, oh, that's the same, I did that same thing, it's so much fun. Like, you don't need to do it.
But we do that in our daily conversation
Right.
with others,
I
yeah.
do
Right.
that all the time. Maybe that's something not to do in real life. I mean,
No, do it in real life,
No, do it.
I guess, but just don't do it in the interview. It's so
Okay.
funny, because
Yeah.
you'll just hear it so much when people are first starting. You'll listen to the person talking, and then there's this voice out of, the camera's pointing, there's this voice out of space like, oh yeah!
Errol,
Yes, sir.
I have a comment I'd like to make about that.
Please.
There's a very important thing to remember, and that is that there is a period at the end of a sentence. And if you watch news television today and a lot of interviews and everything else, there are particular commentators who never have heard the end of a sentence. They never wait till the period, which tells you that they're not really thinking about what their interviewee is saying. All they're thinking about is what they're going to say next.
Yeah, no, that's great, that's great. Hey, we're done with pre-production, which means the rest of it we're going to rip through, because we've already answered, we've done all the heavy lifting already, right? I mean, we know what we're going to do. We know what cameras we need. We know, we've got our shot list. We know what shots we need. We've got our storyboard. We've got our interview questions. We've done all of the hard work now. So when we're on location, Jim asked a question last week about how do you keep your crew moving forward. And I heard this term and I thought, oh, that's perfect. The term benevolent dictator. And it kind of like, I had a reaction like, yeah, that's kind of where you have to land. So you ultimately have to be in charge. You have to tell people, like, this is what we're doing, this is where you're setting up the cameras, but you have to do it in a loving way. I don't know, you just have to do it in a way that makes people feel like they're part of it. Ask questions. Let people, give people the objective and let them make decisions until that very last moment where you really have to say, okay, that's not working, let's do this. But give people ownership of their role in the project. and I think you're going to have better luck. So ultimately, it's your decision, but as much as you can, make it feel cooperative. That's great. With that said, it's definitely not cooperative, and I think that's a mistake a lot of people make. I'm very guilty of it because I really like teamwork and I really like cooperation. I think it's really neat when we can all work together. It doesn't work on the film set in general, and that there is a system that works from Hollywood on down to the lowest, simplest student production, which is you just need a director. If everyone is trying to direct and no one is looking at wardrobe, you're gonna have a problem. If you've got one person specifically looking at wardrobe, one person specifically looking at location, one person specifically listening to audio, if the person who's listening to audio never has to worry about the image, they're just gonna do a way better job. If you have everyone kind of doing a little of everything, it's really easy to miss something. So this is an art form that's very much divided into roles. And then when all those roles come together, the magic happens.
So if you're doing a film by yourself.
If you're doing a film by yourself, then you have to do it all. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
That's what I
no
mean.
question.
Then you're a cruel dictator.
Yeah, then be cruel to yourself.
Well,
Actually, that's true. I think I'm nicer to other people than I am to myself sometimes. Stay open to good ideas from the people you work with.
Boy.
Make sure if you're working with a crew, they know their jobs. And as we said before, the plan is a compass, it's not a blueprint. Allow those good ideas to come through. Sometimes the person you're interviewing will say, but they'll surprise you. They'll be like, I also really want to talk about this. And it turns out to be the goal in the interview. Often my favorite question in an interview, at the very end of every interview, I ask something to the effect of, what did I forget to ask you? Or if you were sitting here and you were asking questions, what is the question that, what's the thing that I forgot? What do you want to tell me that I forgot about? And they'll be like, well, and I'm like, that's the only soundbite I needed. That was the first 5 minutes were on the cutting room floor, and that was what I needed. So people will surprise you what they'll come up with. I also happen to be reading another book right now. I've mentioned it, I think, before, that I'm reading a book about documentary films that I'm really enjoying. And Ken Burns said this: the thing is, it's autocratic. Somebody has to be responsible for making decisions. At the end of the day, that person is me. But until that moment, you have to do it. It's a better process to be open to anybody. We love that sense of participation. I think that doesn't need an explanation. So that's it. That's production. We're done. Now we're on to post-production. This is the time where you have all of your footage. You've got your plan, you've filmed everything, and now you have to ask yourself, how did your plan work? Because really, you're going to be rewriting that script. You're not lockstepped at all into that plan you had. Things happen, happy coincidences, unfortunate failures. A lot of things will happen when you're shooting. So you're almost rewriting a second time.
But could you also go back into production when you realize you forgot something?
For sure.
That happened to me.
Do it all the
So
time.
you're flitting back
Do
and
it
forth between
all-
the last two steps.
Do you know what? That is exactly, that I'm glad you brought that up, because that is exactly how I work. And I
Okay.
think that's how a lot of people work. And it's such a good point. I mean, it's like the umbrella of all of this is that in order to communicate, we have to break things down into pre-production, production, post-production, so we have something to talk about. But the reality is they're all happening simultaneously often. I will be shooting and writing, and then once I'm done shooting, I will... Great example is I just scheduled a shoot for a video, and I'm going to film half of the subjects next week, and then I'm intentionally going to take the weekend before I film the spokesperson, because I'm going to see what all of our testimonial people said, cut it together, and then rewrite the script for the spokesperson based on what they're doing. So I'm doing pre-production, editing, and shooting all simultaneously. But that doesn't mean I haven't done my pre-production first. It just means when I'm done with pre-production and I start shooting, I know I'm going to have to go back and rewrite the script. I know I'll be editing and rewriting, and then once I'm done editing one portion of it, I'm gonna have to go back to shooting to shoot the, it all gets muddied.
It's like you do an assessment for what you have
Right,
gotten.
right,
Then you do an action based on that assessment.
right,
or
right. In a perfect,
advising.
in a perfect world, it goes great, but my world never goes perfect. Maybe other people's do. Mine always needs to be, I always need to reassess and do something else halfway through. Especially if it's not, if it's scripted, you have a lot better luck, but if you're doing documentary style, you're constantly reassessing and rewriting. But I do want to say, don't lose sight of the original plan, because I think this is something you have to be really wary of. What I often find people do is, and myself, is you have an original plan and it's really exciting. It's great, and you know it's going to be great. And then you execute it, and you watch it, and you live with it for a couple of months, and you get bored of it. Simply by the act of living with it for a few months. And I think you have to push past that. I think you have to know your original plan is good and stick with it. You can't change, there's probably some metaphor here. It's like you're going downstream, you can't try and start pushing the boat back upstream halfway through. Because it really is just your boredom. If you hear the same joke 10 times, it's just no longer funny. And the same thing is with your video. This thing that was really exciting to you becomes boring. The images that you were really excited about, you've seen them a bunch. So don't lose sight of your original plan as you rewrite. You probably had a pretty good plan to start off with, and you just got to follow through and finish that. Somewhere in between there is the truth. And another quote from Ken Burns: typically the entire script will be rewritten 2, 3, 4, or 10 times during the course of editing as we discover things. Rather than a presentation of what I know, this is a sharing of the audience what I've discovered. This, I think, is like the key. Yeah. It's that discovery. Everything cycles back around. There are so few, there aren't that many, there's a limited set of ideas. You can probably tell someone how to make a video in like one page, but they all are so nuanced. It's when you discover things and you're interested, when you're in the interview and you're curious, when you have that unique story to tell, then you're not trying to copy, March of the Penguin, you're trying to tell your story or whatever. You have these discoveries, and as you discover them, the audience is interested. The audience discovers them with you, and then it's interesting. Christopher Walken, the actor, he said once that his job as an actor, he thought, was to surprise himself. He's like, how can the audience be surprised about what I'm going to do if I can't surprise myself? I thought that was interesting from a sort of different perspective. And he's Christopher Walken. But yeah, the more you can surprise yourself and discover things, I think the better off you are. And as I often say, there's only one way to learn, just go produce and direct a show. That's all I've got for you. Does anyone have questions, please?
That was great.